point, isn't it?
Yes, Becky, I heard Alex from New York say that the administration is striking a positive tone in public about this. I can tell you from speaking to these senior officials that in private it is a very different tone. In fact, when I saw senior White House officials on Friday and over the weekend, there was this collective shrug that the plan, which was to clinch a ceasefire in Gaza, that would then unlock a deal that has in many ways been pre-negotiated for a new security arrangement over Lebanon, that plan had all but collapsed. By early this week, they had this ceasefire idea, which they have been working with the French. Now, it's been described to me as a Hail Mary, an unlikely situation to pan out. But the administration nonetheless feels that they need to try, given how dire the situation is on the ground. There are no illusions that Hezbollah, Nasrallah has sort of climbed up the tree by linking Lebanon and Lebanon's fate to Gaza, refusing to ceasefire across that border unless there's a ceasefire in Gaza. And they understand that that's a very difficult thing to achieve, to decouple Lebanon from Gaza, because the entire Iranian and Hezbollah strategy from day one after the October 7th attack has been this unity of fronts, this kind of ring of fire that they've established around Israel. So for Nasrallah to concede and back away from that and ceasefire without a ceasefire in Gaza is very difficult to imagine. Very quickly, I'll tell you that the thing to look out for is certainly Benjamin Netanyahu's speech at the UN tomorrow. There are some quiet hopes in the administration that he would offer Nasrallah the fig leaf he needs on Gaza to climb down from that tree. Perhaps an end to major operations in Gaza, a declaration of victory that things are winding down. But yes, in the background here, the administration is not hopeful.
Is there anything else that the US feels that they are prepared to use as leverage against Netanyahu, if indeed he isn't prepared to even countenance the prospect of a ceasefire deal at this point? We know there is enormous frustration behind the scenes. We also know that the military aid tap is still on. I mean, what are you hearing behind the scenes?
Yeah, great question. That's a question that I pose quite often to every official I speak to. The reality is, Becky, that there's a lot of daylight between the American administration and Netanyahu. The president himself kind of doesn't hide that. But the real question is what the administration is willing to do about it in an election year that is a pretty tightly contested presidential election, and where the issue of Israel has very serious domestic considerations. Does Bibi Netanyahu have to worry about being censured at the UN Security Council? Can he still count on the American veto should the Europeans and the French bring a motion to the floor at the Security Council if, in fact, Bibi refuses to sign on to this ceasefire? It's not clear at this point that the administration is willing to go to bat to Bibi Netanyahu, but I wouldn't be surprised if Netanyahu is first and foremost willing about his domestic considerations too, and the possible collapse of his coalition should he accept this ceasefire.
Firas, I was on the phone last night for quite a long time, also speaking to sources around this region about the prospect of a ceasefire anytime soon, and frankly, those that I spoke to very much echoing what you've heard from US officials. I mean, this is a proper outside chance. I mean, nobody's really, nobody's really believing that they can pull this off anytime soon. The problem is when you talk to regional sources, the concern about what happens next if this continues in Lebanon and if there's a ground invasion and the Israelis go all out, the concern is palpable. I know we've talked for weeks and weeks about the risk of an escalation, concerns about sort of regional instability. We are right in that sweet spot at this point, aren't we? Just explain from your perspective, given those that you speak to around this region as well, and you've been on this Lebanon file now for months and months, what are the risks here?
The concern is palpable, and I'll tell you, there's a bit of sort of wishful thinking that's taking place here amongst these capitals that are involved in these negotiations. And the wishful thinking is that the Israeli prime minister here will pocket the win. They have done quite well for themselves militarily. It's been a shock and awe campaign. First, the pager attack, which was sophisticated and unprecedented, then the walkie-talkies, an ultimatum to Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, saying, we can have a deal now if you stop firing, or we can continue. And then this barrage that killed the top military command of Hezbollah. So clearly, Bibi Netanyahu here feels the wind in his sail. The argument I made in a recent piece I wrote for Time magazine is that the real objective, or the primary objective here from Bibi Netanyahu, doesn't seem to be the return of 60,000 plus Israelis to the north. That is unlikely to happen without unlocking a political deal. A ceasefire can be the gateway to it. But the real objective here is to degrade the Iranian ring of fire around Israel, Lebanon, Hamas, the Houthis in Yemen, militias in Syria and Iraq, and the crown jewel being Hezbollah in Lebanon. So if that is truly the key objective here, it seems that mission creep is probably what will happen. Netanyahu will continue to push forward in Lebanon.
Firas, your analysis and insights so important to us. Thank you so much. Out of Washington today, where the time is just after 10:15 in the afternoon, it's 6:15 in the evening here in Abu Dhabi. Appreciate it, mate. Thank you.